Here are the main developments as Russia's invasion enters day 338. Russia is violating the fundamental principles of child protection in wartime by giving Ukrainian children Russian passports and putting them up for adoption. This is according to the UN's refugee agency chief. Speaking at the UNHCR offices in Kyiv following a 6-day tour of the country, Filippo Grandi said Ukraine's president had asked his agency to do more to help children from occupied regions to whom this was happening.
Giving children in Russia, Ukrainian children that come from, I guess, the occupied parts of Ukraine, but are Ukrainian, giving them nationality or having them adopted goes against the fundamental principles of child protection in situations of war. It's, the Children Convention and other Convention of the Rights of the Child and other instruments are very clear. In a situation of war, you cannot determine if children have families or guardianship. And therefore, until that is clarified, you cannot give them another nationality or having them adopted by another family. So that's very clear. We've said it, but I want to say it again, that this is something that is happening in Russia and must not happen. Again, sporadic information, no statistics, and difficult to pinpoint the concrete aspects, but there are reports that this is happening, but I can't tell you how much it is.
Have you sought...
In the meantime, the Kremlin has brushed off the United States' designation of the Wagner private military group as a transnational criminal organization, saying Washington had been demonizing the group for years without any basis. British Defense Chief said last week that Wagner, founded by Yevgeny Prigozhin, a longtime confidant of President Vladimir Putin, could have recruited up to 50,000 Russians to fight in Ukraine alongside Russia's official armed forces. The Kremlin spokesperson also said that U.S. President Joe Biden had the key to end the conflict in Ukraine by directing Kyiv, but that Washington had so far not been willing to use it. And U.S. weapons and military equipment sales to foreign governments saw a sharp increase in fiscal 2022, largely due to the Russia-Ukraine conflict. That's according to data released by the U.S. State Department. It said direct military sales by U.S. companies rose over 48% to more than $153.7 billion U.S., while sales arranged through the U.S. government rose over 49% to about $51.9 billion U.S. in 2022. The State Department attributed the sharp increase in arms sales to Washington's weapon exports to Ukraine since the start of the Russia-Ukraine conflict in February 2022. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said more weapons were necessary to fight off Russian firepower. Mr. Zelensky said triumph in the battle for Donbass were crucial in weakening the Russian army across Ukraine. More than a dozen officials have been removed this week following a series of scandals and graft allegations.
Every Russian missile against our cities, every Iranian drone which terrorists use, are arguments for why more weapons are needed. Only weapons neutralize terrorists. I thank all our units which show the resilience that Ukraine needs, exhausting the occupier and destroying it. The more Russia loses in this battle for Donbass, the less its overall potential will be. And one more thing, unfortunately, I have to repeat it for those who fail to hear, that any travel abroad by state officials, people's deputies, representatives of local authorities, and other persons authorized to perform the functions of the state or local governments, any of their travel abroad must be in accordance with the relevant decision of the National Security and Defense Council. There will be no other trips abroad by officials or deputies during wartime.
Meanwhile, Canadian Defence Minister Anita Anand says the country will send 4 Leopard 2 battle tanks to Ukraine after Germany this week allowed other countries to re-export the German-built tank. She added that members of the Canadian Armed Forces will be deployed to train Ukrainian soldiers in the operation and maintenance of the tanks. She also said that Canada may donate additional tanks in the future, depending on the talks and coordination with allies.
Today, I am announcing that Canada will supply Ukraine with 4 Leopard 2 main battle tanks in the coming weeks. This donation, combined with the contributions of allies and partners, will significantly help the armed forces of Ukraine as they fight heroically to defend their nation's freedom and sovereignty. These 4 tanks are combat ready and will be deployed over the coming weeks. We will also deploy a number of Canadian Armed Forces members to train Ukrainian soldiers with the skills they need to operate this equipment, pending coordination with allies. Although I am announcing the donation of 4 tanks today, this number may grow as we coordinate donation and sustainment plans with our allies.
And a leading military analyst says Western-made battle tanks will have the battlefield advantage over their Russian counterparts, adding that once they are deployed in Ukraine, it will give them an advantage in a possible offensive to reclaim its territories.
Well, individually, I mean, Western main battle tanks, and it doesn't matter whether it's the Challenger, the Abrams, or the Leopard, you know, they have overmatch on Russian capabilities in terms of their firepower and certainly protection. They also have, I think, better optics, better stabilization, so they're better at firing on the move. They're also better at locating and also critically in tank warfare, getting off that first shot. So the tanks will make a real difference, but there's, you know, it's definitely an element of quality over quantity. So Ukraine will still need to decide actually how they use these tanks. You know, do they put them straight into the fight as soon as they're available, or do they integrate them into larger formations, train and rehearse at those larger formations, and spend a bit more time integrating them into the way that they fight, to then potentially use in the summer? I mean, we'll certainly see these main battle tanks used in Europe this year to probably great effect, because we also, you know, all of these tanks were designed, you know, going back into the early 80s to be used in Eastern Europe under those conditions. You know, they were not meant for the conditions of Iraq and Afghanistan where they found themselves in the last 20 years. The protection that a Western main battle tank provides means that there's a better chance of surviving a hit yourself. The issue with Russian tanks is a pretty significant design flaw, is that they don't compartmentalize their ammunition storage within the tank itself. And that's why you've seen a lot of footage of a top attack from an NLAW or a Javelin anti-tank guided weapon system hitting the top turret of a tank, which ordinarily might not destroy the tank, but it causes the ammunition to cook off and then therefore destroys the whole tank. Western systems don't have that disadvantage, and they have a variety of countermeasures. Their armor is much better, so they should be able to withstand some of the hits that have taken out Russian tanks up until now.
Welcome back. And now for more on Germany and the US announcing to send tanks to Ukraine. We talked to Deutsche Welle's correspondent Wada Imran to get more about Germany's position. Hi, Wada. How was the reaction within Germany to the news that tanks will now be delivered to Ukraine?
Actually, that's very interesting. The attitudes of people in Germany has been changing because it was a will they, won't they from the government for so long. Only a few days before Germany's announcement came through, a survey was conducted by research organization Forza to assess the attitudes of the people. And what they found was that supporters of the Green Party are most in favor of supplying these tanks. Supporters of the ruling party and the other parties are much more cautious. And far-right supporters are totally rejecting this idea. Around a quarter of Germans, 26%, believe that chances to end this war in Ukraine will improve if more and more weapons and heavier ones are delivered. On the contrary, just as many, 26%, assume that this will worsen the chances of an end to the war. You see, in Germany, there is fear and sometimes anxiety towards war and aggression. That's why they have had a pacifist defense strategy outside of the NATO alliance. But now things are changing, and with that, so are the attitudes of the people. That's also why the German Chancellor, Olaf Scholz, put off this announcement until they could get the kind of agreements from international alliances that they would also do the same. Because the optics of a German tank facing a Russian tank, it brings up a certain kind of sentiment and feelings for people. So I think it's an interesting divide, and it also shows that people are questioning the role Germany has played and can play in this war.
And Wagner, this decision to send the tanks must also be pleasant news for the defense industry. How are the players within that industry reacting?
That's very interesting. The company that is actually the manufacturer of the Leopard tank, Rheinmetall, is in the spotlight right now. Their market value has increased. Their outlook is better than before. In a recent interview, the chief executive of this company said that in former times they were threatened and sometimes insulted for being around. And today people are thanking them for being able to provide these kind of help to Ukraine. So I think that in that sense, the defense industry has actually risen up after a long time of like passive behavior. This company that I mentioned, Rheinmetall, they've been given a valuation of 10 billion euros. That's a big increase, over 2.5 times over the last 1 year. So I think that this is good for this business, and also other companies, for example, Hensoldt, which makes the surveillance system for these specific Leopard tanks, said that the industry is changing forever, perhaps. They no longer need orders to begin manufacturing, but then they do have supply chain bottlenecks because they have so many orders. Another interesting thing that the Hensoldt executives said, that they think that air radar systems will be as available to companies as groceries are in the supermarket. Ammunition companies are poised to follow suit.
So the once dormant industry is now going to create jobs and then opportunities. Is there a shift in employment towards defense-related jobs in Germany, or is it too soon to say?
Yeah, the answer is both yes and no. As these companies stand to make more profit and their value of their shares keep rising, there's just definitely going to attract people to enter these industries. I think that there's still a bit of an ethical question when it comes to this. However, recruiters are saying that people now have better attitude towards these kind of jobs. A German HR recruitment company that works mainly with defense companies said earlier that they would actually maybe hide the name of a company looking to recruit because people were not so excited about working for arms producers. But she also said that there's been a notable removal of taboos in the defense sector. They're also looking to hire more women, and their pay disparity is high. So, but despite all these factors, I think people still will consider the ethical and moral aspects of their job, but definitely this opens many doors for employment.
Thank you, Wagner. That's Deutsche Welle's correspondent, Wagner Emmerman, bringing us the latest from Berlin. Well, in the meantime, the European Union wants swift accountability for horrific crimes in Ukraine. This was as EU justice ministers deferred over the methods in a debate about how to bring prosecution, seek evidence, or fund war damage repairs. Kyiv reported heavy fighting in the east of the country today, capping a week when the West promised to provide modern battlefield tanks for the first time to help Ukraine fight back against Moscow. The ministers discussed collecting evidence as well as setting up a new international tribunal to prosecute Moscow's aggression.
I think it's both realistic, and I think that's the only way to go. Nobody that is doing this kind of war crimes go free. It's very, very important that we will find a way to hold responsible people accountable.
I think it's very important that obviously we don't say anything that preempts processes and legal structures, but there absolutely will have to be accountability for horrific international crimes. The brutality of what we're seeing in relation to Ukraine, the way people are being treated in Ukraine, the sheer brutality, the loss of life, and the clear and apparent war crimes. So it's an opportunity today to discuss with colleagues, to get a perspective from around the table, and to reiterate European solidarity for Ukraine and for the people of Ukraine and Russian aggression.
Well, Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has criticised supporters of Russia's invasion of Ukraine days after a video emerged showing Novak Djokovic's father posing for pictures with fans holding Russian flags. Mr. Albanese was speaking to a news conference after a reporter asked if Djokovic's father should be deported after he was seen posing for the pictures. Mr. Albanese was touring a defence manufacturing facility at the time, inspecting the Australian Bushmaster protected mobility vehicles, which will be sent to Ukraine to support their defence efforts.